In this lesson, we are going to look at the way that we support ourselves. I will give you a series of instructions, and at some point I'm going to tell you to rest. You rest because we're also learning, and learning is exhausting. So you rest because there's a neurological process going on, whether you're conscious of it or not. And if you're going slow enough and your brain is registering new movement patterns, you want to stop. Give yourself time to process, integrate what's going on, and continue again. So, to begin, come stand up. I'm Tara, by the way, sorry. Jeez Louise. Welcome. And stand on the hard floor, because that's a pretty accurate reading for your feet. And don't stand any particular way, just stand comfortably. And notice how it is today. Even if you've done Feldenkrais 1,000 times, this is an opportunity to learn about how you are today. And overall, how is it to stand? Are you comfortable? And then you can get a little more particular and you can say, okay, well, do I notice that there's a different kind of contact in the bottom of one of my feet or the other foot? Is there a different kind of muscular contraction in one leg or the other leg? And then you can also pay attention to your chest and your back and your shoulders. What does your back and your shoulders have to do with standing on your legs? And what about your head? How is your head as you're standing? How is your breathing? Are you breathing? Is it difficult to feel yourself and breathe at the same time? And do a movement of reaching one of your arms up. Imagine something that you would reach for in your home or outside, and feel how it is to reach with that arm. Notice the arm that you lifted. And just a few times reach gently for something and then let it go and reach gently. And see if you can pay attention to how it feels to do that movement. And then you can compare with the other arm. Is there anything different? Is it easier to reach the other arm? Is it different somehow? Does it affect how you stand when you reach? Okay. And then leave that and have a walk around. And see what you notice. And overall, how comfortable are you as you're walking? Something I've been studying a lot, especially with women, is comfort and the way that we assess and process our own comfort or discomfort, and how discomfort becomes normal. Okay, and go back to your place and push your cushions off to the side first and lay on your back. Bring your legs long and your arms by your sides. And if it's uncomfortable to have your legs long for any reason, then have your knees bent and your feet standing instead. And have your arms more or less by your sides as though you were standing, unless, again, there's some reason that that's not comfortable. Usually that ends up meaning deciding if there's a way that you could use a little less effort, a little less strain. And then notice how it is to lay here like this. What do you find yourself paying attention to? So now consider again this idea of comfort. And consider how comfortable are you laying here this way on your back. And consider, well, how do you know? How do you know that you're comfortable or that you're uncomfortable? And this is part of the learning that we do with the Feldenkrais Method. It's becoming more aware of what we feel. So pay attention to your back and notice the way that your back is touching the mat. And you could look at your back in terms of your low back area that may or may not be touching the mat, and then your middle back area and your upper back, and see what part of your back stands out the most to you. Some parts of your back might feel more comfortable than other parts. And then also feel the back of your pelvis, the back of your hips, and the way that you feel the back of your hips resting on the mat. And then see if you can compare the way that you feel the back of your right hip, your right low back, your right ribs, your right upper back, your right shoulder, that whole area. And then compare, how does that area on the right side touch the mat? And how does the left hip, left low back, left ribs, left upper back, left shoulder make contact with the mat? And if you keep your attention, you might start to develop more sensing of the differences on each side. And then also compare, whether your feet are standing or if your legs are still long, compare the way that you feel your right leg from the heel to the hip, and compare it to the way that you feel your left heel to your left hip. And then see how it is to feel from your right hand up to your right shoulder. And what's different in the way that you feel yourself from your left hand to your left shoulder? So in these lessons, what we usually do is look at a particular theme, but the theme is always in the context of the whole self. And this is really the key, and I think this is what makes the Feldenkrais practice quite unique from certainly any other practice I've done, that we keep coming back to improving the way that we sense our whole self. This is the way that this practice can be something that you can take with you all the time. So now finally bring your attention to your head and notice the part of your head that is resting the heaviest into the mat. And if you do the tiniest, slowest, most gentle movement of turning your head left and right, see if you can tell, if you can sense the direction that your nose moves. And if you can, see if you can sense, as you're doing this little movement of your head, what part of your neck are you using? And pay attention to if it actually feels a little bit easier to turn one direction than the other. And then continue with this really gentle movement of rolling your head and see, as you move your head, which is coming from your neck, some movement of your neck, how far down yourself do you feel? Okay, now leave your head quiet in the middle and put your right hand on your forehead so that your fingertips are pointing over to the left. And you can feel the shape of your forehead in your hand. And then with your arm and your shoulder, have your fingertips off to the left instead of to the, yeah, that's it. So your elbows off to the right side. Yeah, and then do a movement of rolling your head to the left, but use your arm. So your head is just going to come for the journey and then come back to the middle. And again, do it slowly and gently. Go at the speed of awareness, whatever your speed of awareness happens to be today. And just see how that is. Okay, and then bring your head back to the middle and switch hands and have your left hand with the fingers pointing to the right. And do the same thing very, very gently. Use your left arm and left shoulder and roll your head a little bit to the right. And again, pay attention to what's different. And then bring your head back to the middle and now put one hand on top of the other hand on your forehead. So that your right fingertips look to the left and your left fingertips look to the right. And then do the movement with both of your shoulders. So your head goes to the right and back to the middle and to the left. See if you can tell the difference between resting your hands on your head and moving your head with your arms, or resting your hands on your head and moving your arms with your head. Which is easier for you? Okay, leave it, bring your arms down. And feel overall how you're resting on the mat. Now, leave that and roll over onto your right side. And put your head on your right arm or on a cushion. And bend up your knees in front of you. Now, what's interesting is that you can choose the best way to learn on your side by determining what position of your legs allows you to feel the most comfortable and balanced on your side. Now take your top arm, your left arm, and reach it up over the top of your head and scoop your left hand underneath the side of your head so that you're holding the right side of your head, somewhere around the temple, ear. But make sure your arm goes right over the top of your head. Reason being that you're going to lift your head, but you're going to use your arm. So you want to make sure that your hand is in a good, solid, comfortable place so that you can very gently start to lift your elbow toward the ceiling and use your arm to lift your head very gently, not strongly, just gently. It's not an exercise move. It's a sensing move. And see how it is to lift your head and then bring your head back down. And that's your movement. And decide, are you moving at the speed of awareness or are you moving at the speed of achievement? Where could you reduce the effort? And this is where our game really begins. This is where Feldenkrais really ends up being a bit of an Alice in Wonderland situation. Is learning the ways, first of all, that you obviously work too hard, and then eventually learning the ways that you subtly, unconsciously work too hard. Okay, and then rest a moment here on your side. You can have your arm, whatever position is comfortable. And notice the way that your breathing moves on the left side of you as you're laying on the right side of you. And if you listen carefully, some of you might notice that there's this very subtle response in your shoulder. Now leave that and keep your arm where it is, but straighten your top leg down under you as though you were standing on it. And it doesn't have to be, strongly straight, comfortably straight. And have your foot resting on the floor, so your leg's not lifted. But see if, without looking, I'll let you look in a second, but without looking first, imagine that you were standing on your left foot. If you were standing up right now, would you be balancing on your leg, or would you be in kind of a bit of a pike position or a funny position? So in other words, is your left leg aligned with your hip in your sensing? And then go ahead and take a peek and look down and see, is your leg actually in line with your hip, or is it a bit forward of your hip or a bit back of your hip? And it doesn't need to be a perfect alignment. The idea is for you to kind of see if there's a disparity between what you feel and what you're actually doing, yeah? Okay. Now, keep your left hand on the floor in front of you for a little bit of extra balance, and then feel how it is to lift your whole straight left leg up and bring it back down. Make sure that Jane Fonda doesn't come in and take over. And instead of thinking about where you're going to engage or flex or stretch, think about, as you lift your leg, how comfortable is it? And is there something you could do that would change the way that you lift your leg? Which maybe at this point there's not. Let's see what's possible for you now. How do you do it? How do you lift your leg? Where do you get the strength to lift your leg? What are you using? Now, if you feel fatiguing somewhere now or as we continue in the lesson, you never have to wait for me to say to rest, right? It's your own learning process. So it might, if you find, I know for me, when I start this lesson, I usually feel it in my hip. My hip takes over all the work. So if that happens to you, if you start fatiguing, just pause and then come back to it when you're ready. So at no point do you want to start to strain. That's the game, the brain game that you're playing, is if you can stay in a zone that you're not straining, which for a lot of us is an interesting challenge. Okay, leave that, rest again a moment on your side. Put your left hand back up and over your head so that you're holding on to the right side of your face. Lengthen out your left leg below you as though you were standing on it. And now this time, see how it feels to lift both pieces at the same time. Is it any easier to lift your head if you're also lifting your leg? And what are you doing? Could you reduce the strain? Even if maybe you didn't do such a good job, maybe it didn't look quite so great, that you were to do something a little bit differently than what you're doing. Okay, and pause a moment. So now, here's where things start to get interesting in terms of what's happening neurologically. So now, put your arm back over your head again, and check and see, after the variations that you just did, how is it now to lift your head? Has it changed at all? Again, maybe it has, maybe it hasn't. It doesn't need to be a difference. You're just listening. How is it to lift your head? And this time, as you're doing it, pay attention to how you've chosen to breathe, or perhaps not breathe. And consider, is the way that you're breathing supporting what you want to do? Okay. leave it, take a little rest on your back. So move your cushion away unless you absolutely need it, and have your legs long, your arms by your sides. Rest on your back, and again, bring your attention to the way that you're making contact with the floor. And then come back onto your same side again, onto your right side. Again, either with your head on your right arm or on the cushion. Bend your knees forward in front of you so that you can be comfortably balancing on your bottom hip and shoulder. Put your left arm up and over your head, hold on to the right side of your face. And do a little study again. And pay attention to the feeling of simultaneously breathing in to your chest, inflating your chest, and lifting your head. See what that feels like. And then as you lower your head, breathe out. Go at the speed of awareness. Can you feel the connection between inflating your ribs on the left side and in the front and back as you lift your head, and then let it go as you bring it down? How easy is it for you to lift your head breathing this way? Do a little comparative research. Now investigate what's different for you if you empty your ribs, if you breathe out and let your ribs soften and empty and lift your head. Okay, and then pause a moment. Now see if you can feel/imagine the relationship between the head, your head as it's positioned now, and the length of your spine. This time you're going to bring your head forward, lift your head, bring your head forward, bring your head back where it was, put it down. See if you can do that in the context of your spine. Is it possible, even if you did half this big of a movement, that you could find a way that's a little smoother and easier? And as you continue again, consider the relationship between your head and your spine. Where do you bend your spine in order to bring your head forward? Bring your head down, rest a bit. Straighten out your left leg. Put your left hand on the floor in front of you. Same thing with your leg. Lift your leg a comfortable amount and bring your leg forward like your leg had an eye on it and you wanted to look at your face with your leg. And then bring your leg back where it was and bring it down. Your leg is not an autonomous being that lives on a planet by itself. Your leg is integrated into your whole self. So, how does your leg create a relationship with your spine in this situation when you bring your leg forward? Remember, don't wait until you're fatiguing. Always pause whenever you feel like it's time to pause. And then you'll come back refreshed if you really take your time with it. You won't burn out or get frustrated or strained. Your leg doesn't need to be rigidly straight, but you want to keep your legs straight. And that changes the relationship that your leg has through your hip to your spine. Okay, bring your leg down, put your left arm up and over your head. Check in with the way that you're breathing. Check in with the way that you feel breathing in your left ribs, your left side. Consider the most functional way for you to breathe. And take your time, gently, gradually, see how it is to lift your leg and your head. Bring them both forward like they were going to look at each other in front of you. Go back where you were and bring them down. Can you soften in your mouth and your neck and your jaw? Can you soften in your belly? Can you do it a couple times in a completely different way than you've been doing it? I notice some of you are kind of like you find your groove and you repeat and you repeat and you repeat. So just investigate, take a pause, and then consider for yourself what is a different way that you could do the movement, any different way, and just see how that is. Okay, and then again, bring everything down and pause. So what you're doing in this lesson is you're finding a way to mobilize two far ends of yourself. And in order to mobilize the far ends of yourself, you have to figure out a way to integrate the middle part of yourself. So as you retest how it is to just simply lift and lower your head, the first movement, just retesting it, consider again the way that you feel the middle part of yourself involved in the movement of lifting your head. And then bring your head down and again straighten out your left leg. Now this time, keep your leg quiet, lift your head, imagine there's an eye on the back of your head, and bring the back of your head back in space, and then return and lower your head. Does your belly know that you're bringing your head back? Does your chest know that you're bringing your head back? Leave it, rest a moment. Put your left hand on the floor in front of you. Straighten out your left leg. Pause there and assess if just in this position you could be a little more comfortable. And then in this situation, same thing, but just with your legs. You're going to lift your leg, find the height of your leg that's the most effortless, and bring your whole leg back. And then return and lower it down. And pay attention to how that changes your balance. And this is something extremely interesting, is if you can pay attention to how your balance is changed, then you might start to be able to learn the relationship of the weight of your leg and the way that you're leaning on the right side of you. So see what part of you can you lean into the floor as you bring your leg back. What part of you goes a little bit forward as the leg part of you goes a little bit back? What does your shoulder do when your leg goes a little bit back? Okay, and then pause. And roll on your back for a second. Take a little rest, lengthen yourself out. Bring your attention back to your contact with the mat. So if we are so accustomed to living in a low level of discomfort, then it actually becomes more difficult to experience comfort. We don't know how. We have super strong habits, muscular habits, postural habits. Extremely strong habits in our thinking, our behavior, the things that we think we need to feel safe. It's definitely not comfortable or easy to look at those things. And that's really what this work is actually about, is finding out when we are so stuck in the way something has always been or should be, that we actually limit our own comfort and our own well-being. So it's a little container for learning about possibilities. Yeah. So come back onto that same side again. Put your left hand on the floor. Have your knees bent up comfortably in front of you. Come back to sensing the movement on the left side of you as you breathe in and breathe out. And then straighten out your left leg and put your left arm over your head. And retest how it's coming along, just the movement of lifting your head, bringing it back down. See how that is. Can you lean comfortably on your right side as you lift your head? And can you start to listen very directly to the feeling on the side of you, on the left side of you? So as you lift your head and you bring your elbow a little bit toward the ceiling, can you feel that shortening happening on the left side of your ribs? And as you listen for a shortening on the left side of your ribs, what happens on the right side of your ribs? And then reintegrate your left leg and see how is it to lift your leg and your head together. Is that easier on an inhale or on an exhale? And then see if you can find a way, take your time, move at the speed of awareness, to lift your leg and your head and bring them both back, as though the back of your head and the back of your leg wanted to glance at each other, somewhere behind you. But it's not all of a sudden time for James Bond to burst through the door, right? It's just another instruction that's done the same way, with ease and awareness and slow and gentle, right? So notice, when it gets harder, do you effort more? This is the irony, right? Can you allow for your belly to fill forward in an inhale as you bring your head and your leg back? Okay, I'll say that again. So lower everything down, and as you breathe in, see if you can fill your abdomen forward, a big belly going forward, as you bring your head and your leg back. Don't do more, do less. Do less. When it gets hard, do less. Don't do more. You can practice doing more for the rest of the week. But for the next couple minutes of this class, keep coming back to this possibility of doing less. And then leave it, and again, rest on your side. And as you rest on your side, you can have your left hand on the floor. We start to use another tool from the Feldenkrais Method, which is imagining. When you imagine certain functions, you make the same brain map as when you do the function. Imagine putting your arm over your head and imagine straightening your leg. Feel the way that your spine could bend and your belly could fill forward with an inhale as you bring your head and your leg back. So it's just imagining the shape of yourself, breathing in and bringing your head and your leg back. And then in your imagination, as you breathe out, bring your leg and your head forward. And then you can choose, you can continue to practice in your imagination, or if you'd like to try it out, and whenever you feel ready, gently put your left arm over your head and straighten out your left leg. And do half as much as you were doing in your imagination. How do you use your spine to bring your head and your leg forward and your head and your leg back? Nice. Okay, pause with that. So consider the movements that you've looked at with your head. You've lifted it upward toward the ceiling. You've brought it forward. You brought it back. You brought it back down. So those are 4 points, 4 cardinal lines, right? Or 2 lines crossed. So if you were to start to join those lines, you'd have a diamond shape. And if you were to smooth out your diamond, you'd have a circle. So first, in your imagination, how would it be to feel that the top of your head had a long paintbrush attached to it, and that you could begin to draw a circle on the wall above your head with the tip of that paintbrush? So first, in your imagination, what would it be like to lift your head up toward the ceiling, forward toward the mirrors, down toward your arm or the cushion, back toward the wall behind you, up toward the ceiling? See if you can imagine that feeling of the top of your head. And see if even in your imagination, you can start to feel the effect that could have on your chest, your back, and your ribs. And then again, you choose, continue exploring that in your imagination, or put your arm up and over your head, and moving at the speed of awareness, start to explore how it would be to lift your head toward the ceiling, forward, down toward the floor, back toward the wall behind you, up toward the ceiling. And then after you pause for a moment and let yourself rest, then you might come back and see how is it to do the circle in the other direction. Smooth, slow, easy, comfortable. Leave it. Take a rest on your back. When you get there on your back, roll your head a little bit left and right. Notice how that is. Notice the way you sense your whole self making contact with the floor. How's your breathing? And then one more time, come onto your side. And bend your knees up in front of you and rest your head. Have your left hand on the floor in front of you. Still the same side. Imagine lengthening your left leg. And imagine the height that you can lift your leg effortlessly. And see if in your imagination you can feel how it is to lay on the floor. When you think about it, the weight of your leg is quite heavy, right? If you lift the weight of your leg away from the floor, where does that weight go? How do you get support for that weight in the rest of you, right? And then continue in your imagination to feel how gently and elegantly and comfortably you could start to make a circle with the bottom of your foot. What's interesting is that when you're walking down the street, in order for you to walk, you need to use your hips. You don't need legs to walk, but you need hips, right? And so you're constantly bearing weight on one leg and lifting the other leg and switching. And so what's required of you in order to lift your leg? So continue to imagine it, or if you'd like to practice, then straighten out your left leg and find the height that's the easiest for you to keep your leg lifted. And find out, maybe the circle is huge, maybe it's tiny. Find out for you what size circle is the easiest. Not because you found the way to clench your muscles, but because you're listening to the way you can bring in more of your whole self. You can bring in your breathing. Bring in your shoulders and your head. Bring in your bottom leg. Get support from your bottom leg and your bottom hip as you're doing the circles with your top leg. Always rest when you want to rest and change directions when you want to investigate how it is to go the other way. And then rest a while on your side. And then as a final brain teaser, start in your imagination on your side with your left leg long and your arm over your head. Feel how you gently lift your head and your leg. And in your imagination, feel how you gently bring your head and your leg forward. And then feel how you gently bring them down toward the floor. And then how you gently bring them back. And then how you gently bring them up toward the ceiling. And see if you can imagine how it would be to describe a circle with your leg and your head. in the way that you can start to sense support for the movement, not strain for the movement, support for the movement. And then again, if you'd like, continue to rest or continue to imagine or continue to practice and come back and see how is it for you to describe a circle going at the speed of awareness, not the speed of achievement. You already know that you can bear down and tighten and grip and do it. The question is if you can learn how it feels, how you can minimize strain, and how you can be comfortable. And don't exhaust yourself. You just try, whatever, 2 or 3 circles and you rest. Come back, try 2 or 3 circles and rest. Catch yourself doing something funny, right? Speeding up is a way of compensating. Instead of feeling we speed up, we do more, we go faster. So take your time. You have time. And if you go slow enough, you can feel the difference of your belly going forward, your belly going back, and your weight shifting forward and your weight shifting back. Right? You got to go slow if you want to feel the things. And then if you're not there already, roll onto your back and rest. And again, lengthen yourself out, your legs long, your arms by your sides. And notice how you are. There's the movement game that we play in this practice, but then there's also the whole self game that we play. And the way your nervous system changes when you pay attention like this, when you take the time like this. What do you notice about your breathing now at the end of the lesson? And then gradually see how it is to bend one knee and stand one foot, bend the other knee, stand the other foot. See how it is to roll over onto your side. And see how it is to keep the sort of the essence of the lesson. Take your time, go at your own pace, eventually come back up to standing and seeing how that is, and to walking around and seeing how that is. At some point, stand and retest how it is to reach one arm up for something and then the other arm up for something. How do you feel your whole self? In yourself, in the room, connecting to the floor, and space around you. And then can you take that with you out into your day?